35% of New Zealand households rent, so that's pretty significant. What is increasing is our ageing population is going to turn that on its head.
Rental property management expert Megan Lamont is known for her passion and expertise in the property rental market.
Having established herself as the property manager with compassion and community in mind.
By 2048, it's estimated that there will be over 600,000 New Zealanders over 65 renting. Are we equipped for that?
Is New Zealand becoming one of the most expensive places to rent in the world?
That's tricky, Mina. The cost of living in New Zealand is very high because we're a little country with not many people. Compared to 20 years ago, it was completely different. People were renting on their way to home ownership, whereas now it's completely flipped.
You're a property owner. How can you add value to the property?
Renting is still cheaper. You pay the price, you know what your cost is.
Is it better to rent or to buy a house right now?
Well, right now, I think if you're... Property in New Zealand is very expensive, but that's another whole conversation. You know, if you talk to most young Aucklanders, a lot of them will say...
Hello. Quick one. Mina here. Thank you for watching this episode. I appreciate you. Thank you for all your support. One thing that you can do for me is to please hit the subscribe button below. A lot of people who come and watch this podcast or listen to the podcast are not subscribers. And so we're trying to increase our subscriber base. We are wanting to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. Are you able to help us? I promise you that if you hit subscribe, I'm going to work hard to make sure that my episodes are really good, that will get better and better. So, do we have a deal? Okay, back to the episode. Hi, Megan.
Hey, Mina.
I would love to get to know you a little bit more, and my audience would know you. Could you tell us a bit about your earliest experiences as a child and how those experiences helped shape you for who you are today?
I grew up in Taranaki on a farm, rural, North Taranaki, so a little town called Yuranui, which is where my dad still lives, and it was a great upbringing in the 70s. We just did... we rode the road on bikes for kilometres to go to a pool with no adults supervising. You just wouldn't do that these days. And just a really close-knit community, a really strong community. And I've got 3 brothers, so I think that makes a real big difference. 1 older brother and 2 younger brothers.
Oh, that's nice. Are you close to them?
I am, yes. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. We've all done our own thing. My mum died earlier this year, and the level of closeness has been surprising actually. From such a great loss, it's been a real part of the joy and all that pain is the fact that we've as siblings become so much closer. So, yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful to hear.
Yeah.
You've grown up more like in the countryside, and your earliest experiences were, I suppose, simplicity, isn't it? Not so much the urban, suburban life.
I hadn't been to, when I was 17, I'd only been to Auckland twice, I think. So it was a big city that was like out there. Yeah. When I was 14, my dad became a politician. So although he had been really involved in local body politics, probably my whole life I wasn't really aware of that until at 14 he became the local body politician for MP, and that was way before MMP. And then our life really changed a lot then because he lived in Wellington, commuted. I had to move high school. So a whole lot of stuff happened. And, Dad was a politician for 15 years, a long time.
Who's your dad?
He's Roger Maxwell.
Oh, okay.
So he's a ex-national, had Muldoon on our tea towels, I like to say. Not that I think he was a Muldoon supporter. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but he we grew up in a very national household. So, and I think his desire was for the community, and he worked really hard. You know, every weekend was tied up around Taranaki, visiting all the things that old-fashioned politicians did, I would say.
Were you at some point curious about the life of a politician, and perhaps you might join the party?
No, I wouldn't wish that upon anyone.
It's a big statement there.
It's a big statement. I can't imagine the difficulty that politicians have to live a life these days. That was well before social media.
Yeah.
I think we're all very grateful that there was no social media in those days. I think service to your community is a huge driver, and I think that probably is something that is inside of me, serving my community where I am and the people that are around me. So I think that part is definitely there. I'm a bit of a city girl. I didn't really want to marry a farmer.
No.
I wasn't interested in that.
No. Why is that?
I don't know. I was really happy to take the morning tea and the lunch to the shearing shed. I wasn't really fond of being in the shearing shed. From young, I have no idea. Yeah. I don't think my mum really wanted to marry a farmer either. I mean, she fell in love with Dad, but she was a teacher and was from the very beginning very clear that she wasn't going to be a farmer's wife. She was going to teach, and that was going to be her role. So from very young, she was at home, but she went back to work, and that probably in that era, lots of women didn't. So she really loved her teaching.
And you tell me a bit about your, living now in the city. You've obviously moved on to a career in property management, but you also have a family. And one of the most amazing things I think about when it comes to women who have a family and have a job and have a business, how difficult it is, but how rewarding it is.
Yeah, I think that's a real juggle. Yeah. Which
is it a juggle for you?
Well, I think it is. I think it always has been for me. And some. I mean, we're all different. So some women don't. It's maybe not so much of a juggle, but for me, I've always juggled that. And well, I mean, we all juggle it, and we all juggle life, So I guess it's probably not really a juggle in the sense that you can't. Yeah. I don't like to think that I'm choosing one over the other. It's and I don't think you can have balance. I don't think we sort of talk about this balanced life, and I don't think that's very helpful. I think it's better to look at where your life is at and where do you put your energy and time into. And I think more and more what I did learn is about how to be present with where you are and make those decisions, sort of a real decision to be here. So if when the kids were little, I'm with them, not thinking about other things that I could be doing. Can't say I did that super well. It's really easy to reflect on that now that the kids are growing up. But I think that's probably a key thing in that juggle. But it is challenging, and I think for me, I've sometimes I sort of don't want to necessarily own the world in that sense of taking on that, but then sometimes not satisfied with the success that I had or have. And it's that push-pull of, how do you do that? How do you make that happen? And what does that even look like? I mean, these are all big questions.
Are they big questions? I'm not sure. Okay, well, you talked about a bit of a celebrity 2 degrees of separation with your rather famous father, and back then, tell us about that.
Oh, Dad, yes. Well, we were chatting, and 2 degrees. I think he has met Nelson Mandela. So he has some great stories about that and his opportunity as an MP, and he was a minister outside of cabinet. So he was Minister of Immigration and Business Development, and also meeting the Queen. So he actually met her, I think, on more than one occasion.
What did he tell you about them?
Well, he has some lovely story. Nelson Mandela was just such a generous kind of person with time, I think. And the Queen, well, I mean, she's the Queen, you know. I think it probably wasn't any more than a hello, but
You'd be lucky if you got a hello.
exactly, you know. So, but you know, we love to know that these connections, see the photos and go, oh,
yeah. It is beautiful memories that really kind of imprint something on your heart. And you can't really forget it. They're quite significant. How has it changed you as a person?
knowing that.
Yeah, like
Knowing.
things that have happened in your life that, for example, your dad becoming an MP, being in politics, seeing some well-known people. How has that impacted your life? How has it changed your life? Or has it not done that? Because sometimes people go, it's lovely and well, but it hasn't really done anything for me.
Yeah, I think Dad's career had created us to be very independent. So we were raised very independent. From young, we were given a lot of free rein and supported in that, and that's taken us through. We've all my siblings have done really well in whatever area they chose to pursue, and we were given a lot of opportunity to find that. And so I think Dad had worked really hard, a really interesting background, and then to get into politics. And that was his life, you know. He had been doing politics from at university. He was involved in various things. So he had paved that way to pursue it, and has always encouraged us to pursue the things that we want to.
What were some of the difficult times, though, when you were a bit younger, and the struggles that you had?
Well, I think the biggest thing with politicians is that you lose family connection because it's so demanding. And he lived away. My brothers were younger, in their early teens, and there's a big loss because he's not present, you know, and I don't remember him coming to any netball games, or he was at someone else's netball games. And so that's a loss.
It's a bit interesting looking back, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, you know, yeah. I mean, he was, you know, Mum was very, very involved because she was the key person in our lives. So that, that dynamic's definitely
Well, I'm sure a lot of people relate, even if their mums and dads are not in politics.
Yeah.
It's a situation where it could be applied in many roles, many jobs. CEOs, entrepreneurs, people who are really busy, who have got lots on their plates. And would you say that, I suppose it could be more of like a season that you can be busy if you're like launching something or trying to build something, and then, you know, at some point life is going to come back to normal. But with the life of a politician, for example, it's just consistent. There's no like, oh yeah, we're just going to be busy today and then tomorrow. It's ongoing, and it's a very interesting conversation. But what I really want to ask you is, share the story to me about how you ended up in property management, being a property management expert yourself. How did you get in that?
Well, I had 2 young children and was expecting a third, and a good friend had a property management business and needed some support. And so my background had been in admin and people, and I really enjoy managing bits of paper and enjoy working with people. And so she was like, come and help me. And so I did. And then she didn't want to grow any bigger and said, here's a couple of houses, go and do it. And that was not that we have regulation yet, but that was in the day when there was definitely kind of like just go and do property management. And so I started that, and I had Daniel, he was 6 months old. And so I started that really as probably a side hustle to other things. The kids were the focus, but I also had a couple of other businesses that I did some work with and learnt different things in, but they were all based from home.
What really attracted you to the property management sector?
Well, I like helping people, and property management is helping people. So we help owners, but we also help tenants, and to be that bridge between it. So I like that. I like property. So I like getting things done.
It's all adding up together, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's all just worked out. And so probably, I just decided a bit over 10 years ago, I have this business. Let's really make it. Let's make it something, you know.
You made it something, of course.
Yeah.
Today it's, what's it called?
Yeah, Vertigro Property Management.
What is it? Tell me about it.
Well, it's based on the North Shore and Hibiscus coast, and we manage residential rental properties. So that's essentially for mum and dad landlords. We don't have any major investors that have 10 plus properties. So they're generally people that have bought property or their own home, and they are holding it for their future retirement. That is our bread and butter client from the owner point of view, who are just trying to hold on to property that will hopefully in the future they will be able to sell and have some help towards their retirement. That would be a classic.
And how long have you done your business for, the property management business for?
22 years.
Gosh, that's a long time.
Yeah.
How have you built your brand to what it is today?
A lot of hard work.
If you can condense that, distill that, and lessons that you learned across those 22 years, what could it be useful for us to know? 3 things that you could distill it for, or 2 things, or 1 thing.
I think I have really good people around me that have supported me and encouraged me, definitely. And just wisdom. You know, I've had business coaches and things that have been really pivotal for me to make the next step, to give me the courage to do the next thing. For a long time it was just me, and then I just had real encouragement to step out and to employ someone. You know, you don't really know how that's going to go, and then it's the next person and then the next person, and that's been a real joy to be building we're not taking over New Zealand, but we'd like to take over the area we're in. You know?
Could be.
Yeah. We have some dreams.
After this interview?
Yeah, let's hope so. I love working with people, and I enjoy having a team, and we have a great, I'm really proud of what we've created.
If you had to think about your values as a business owner and your team and your vision, like what would that be? How can you and how do you pass it on to your team members? Firstly, what is the vision of your company or your business?
Our vision, to sum it up really in one little sentence, is to care for people and property. And because I think in caring for people, the byproduct is caring for the property, which is obviously the asset. In terms of us as a company, we want to make sure that we are having, that we're honest, honesty, we're upfront, we're clear, and just creating an environment of trust. So we really value our owners and our tenants, and compared to 20 years ago when it was completely different. market in the sense of people were renting on their way to home ownership, whereas now it's completely flipped, and people are choosing to be lifetime, not choosing to buy a home or not choosing to buy a home where they live. They might buy a house somewhere else as an investment, but it's not where they want to be, and so they're choosing to rent. And it's a significant change, which I think creates a real opportunity, but we have to move with that. We have to move with where times are changing. And in the past, tenants have been treated really poorly. I think times definitely have changed. There are some still that are probably old school. But that's one of our values. It was that we value people. Yeah.
The national median rent in April 2024 remained at $650 New Zealand a week, unchanged from March. Is New Zealand becoming one of the most expensive places to rent in the world?
That's tricky, Mina. They say the cost of living in New Zealand is very high because we're a little country with not many people. We could double the amount of people and the cost of living would decrease. I'm not sure how people would feel about that, but that's probably what we need to do.
But if you can't, undeniably, rent in New Zealand is high. I mean, a lot of what's happening in New Zealand is expensive.
Yeah.
Housing is expensive, food is expensive. Rent is, even though it has gone unchanged this year, but I remember when I was back 10 years ago when I lived in Queenstown, we paid $600 for a 2-bedroom unit, but by the lake.
Yeah. Hey, it's Queenstown.
It's Queenstown, so...
Yeah.
But that's because there was no properties to rent at that time. And we had to go with that luxury option because there's not, it was either having the rental or quitting job and moving to another country, moving to another city. Yeah. So, but Auckland is becoming a bit like that. Give us some light into what's going on in the rental market at present.
Well, Auckland it's a major city, and I think if you looked internationally, all major cities have issues with housing and pricing generally. So that is the reality of a big city. The demands are there, and that just is general market forces operating. The key thing is making sure that what people are renting is meeting needs in the sense of it's a good place to rent. So we're not renting out garages or caravans and things like that, which there have been really big changes which are making sure that happens, which I think is really important. So, and also there is a lot more chatter and beginning to happen now, the build to rent situation, which is they're great initiatives which I think will really help the people, the population, the ageing population, and the population that will never buy their own home. And that's exciting, and the government have made changes to allow for more of that. It will certainly change renting. It is going to change the price of rents. If you see what happens, it happened at Sylvia Park. It's a big build to rent that has opened there, and it's definitely impacted the prices in the area for mum and dad investors. So it's this whole flow on. If you want mum and dad investors in, there has to be a reason to be in that. Otherwise, why would you buy a property? So it's this whole... it's like a braided river. There's lots of different streams that feed into it, and it's definitely a challenge.
Do you think that people who are renting are getting a good deal at the moment in terms of where they're living and how much they're paying? From what you see from your own experience.
Well, I don't think it's probably not as cut and dried as that, because you look at owners, then they are paying high interest rates. a lot of owners I know are having to put in significant sums to hold the property in the hope that they're going to get some kind of capital gain. Are they going to get it in the next 5 years, 10 years or 20 years? And they still have all the costs of maintenance. So it's not quite, one side of the same coin, really. It's a bit more like the Tupperware piece that you find the different parts to go into it,
What's the percentage of people who are renting in New Zealand at the moment? Give us a bit of a snapshot of who's renting, where they're renting, if you know a bit more about these kind of numbers.
There is 35% of New Zealand households rent, so that's pretty significant. So that's across the board, yeah.
Is it above average, or where does it sit in terms of other countries? Or where does it sit in terms of what's normal and what's okay?
Wow.
Is there such thing as normal?
That's a big, yeah. I think
the other question I should say, where were we compared to maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
Yeah, it's definitely increased. So I don't have the exact figures on
No, that's okay.
But it's definitely increased. And I think the significant thing is that what is increasing is our ageing population is going to turn that on its head, because by 2048, so it's still a good few years away, it's estimated that there will be over 600,000 New Zealanders over 65 renting. So that's a massive number, and that is, are we equipped for that in New Zealand? And I would say we're not equipped for that. And an ageing population also changes what properties need. They need single level homes, they need accessibility, they need, extra things around the property to be able to get around with a walker or help in the bathroom. And we're just not set up for that. We're not set up well for disabilities. We've rented to disabled. It is very tough for them to find property that works for them. Exceptionally difficult. So there are percentages of our population that find it very difficult. And then if they find a place, they want to stay. But there are, a lot of people we see leaving properties because they've been sold, because the owners can't make the numbers work anymore and they just can't hold on. So that's, it's this whole, is it too expensive? Property in New Zealand is very expensive. It's very expensive to build, but that's another whole conversation.
I'll have you here for part 2.
Yeah, that's I think affordable housing in terms of building is something New Zealand definitely is not, from my limited understanding of building.
How has the face of tenancy changed over the past decades, and what are the current expectations and understandings compared to 10 years ago?
Well, I think 10 years ago we had a lot of people on their way through renting to their own home. So that would have been, most people were on that path to purchase, whether it would be in the city or elsewhere. But yeah, that's definitely changed. And, if you talk to most young Aucklanders, a lot of them would say, there's no way I'm going to buy a house, or certainly not here. Why would I want to spend that much money on a house? And they'll look for different ways to do that. So whether they, that's the whole mum and dad investor, I guess, is changing the face of that, or people moving out of the cities, going into regions if they can get work, or if they can work remotely. So I think, it's definitely changing. Quite how that rolls out, I guess in 10 years we'll see.
Where do you expect it to be in about 10 years?
Well, I think hopefully we'll have more build to rent, so that people that go into those properties, they have 10-year long leases, a lot more, and European like that, where they have a lifetime for rent, so that they have that security, can enroll their child at school and know that, oh great, we're going to stay if we choose to. I think that creates a whole lot of security for families and individuals, which we don't have now. So I think that can change your society. So I think that's great, and I think hopefully we have more affordable housing so that we have more choices with how to build, which will then mean that people can afford to have their own home. Kiwis love that. I don't know what it is. It's something in our DNA. We left other lands to come here, and there's something about having your own little piece of 400 square metres or 500 square metres. It's something that is for people that come to New Zealand, anyone that comes to New Zealand. It's just that. It's mine.
It's the sense of ownership, isn't it?
I think it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Sense of accomplishment and what it means. That you have.
Maybe that you've,
Yeah.
But then, I know lots of people that have chosen to put money into business and that's where they've invested their time and energy, and they don't want to own a house. They want to ring up and have the maintenance taken care of by someone else. That's a great feeling of freedom too.
Yeah.
Because then they're not tied to a property. They can up and move.
Is it better to rent or to buy a house right now in this year, 2024?
Well, right now, I think if you're buying, you'd get a good deal, maybe, because the market's tough. Renting is still cheaper than buying because you don't, you pay the price, you know what your cost is, you can budget on that. There's not the roof leak that comes up or bathroom leak that happens or driveway that needs seeing or letterbox that needs replacing or...
Is it better long term if you have to rent versus buying the house?
Depends which economist you talk to.
What do you think?
Well, it depends when you're brought. So many factors.
Yeah.
It depends what you want out of life, I think. I think investing for your future is really important. So I see my kids, they've got KiwiSaver, they've got Sharesies, they're busy educating themselves on all of that area, far more than I did at their age, and we encourage them to do that, So for some people, having a mixed portfolio is going to be much better than having property. Because people are banking on the fact that property is going to go up. And depending on who you talk to, they would say, maybe it's not. But it always has. And so this is the dilemma. The crystal ball, is property going to do what it's done in the last 10 years? I don't know. Is it? I mean, those that own property want it to, but do I want that to happen for my kids? No.
Well, there's a question about investment versus buying a house. And then there's a buying a house versus renting.
Yeah.
I know this is, you're not in an investment sector or in the
do not take
sector.
anything I say as a best advisor.
So I probably wouldn't go down that road or stick to property.
Yeah, property management's what I know well.
Okay, so you're a property owner. How can you add value to the property? So imagine that you've, speaking to someone who owns the property right now who wants to rent it, how can they add value to that property?
Yeah, some great ways is seeing if you can add a bedroom, make a bedroom, so that if you've got a two-beddy, we had a classic property that we managed. It was a good-sized two-bedroom, but with a separate laundry, and we said, take the laundry out, add it, put it in. They had a big bathroom, make it in the bathroom, and make the laundry a single bedroom, and that instantly added value to their property. So that's a real key thing. And sometimes you can do that on the same footprint, so you don't have to worry about anything extra. Adding a sleep out or something like that, which is now, the regulations have changed around that and made that much more accessible, so much so that you can almost add a minor dwelling.
Can you please get into that for us in terms of what has changed and make sense of it for us?
Well, you can build without resource consent I believe. Again, check your own regulations on that. But meaning that people can then add value on their property without that significant cost factor that was going to have to be there. But you still need to build things to code and to get that all sorted. So, yeah, you can't just put a shack up and hang out a shingle and say it's for rent. So there are still things you need to do. But it's just looking at the property and going, well, how can I add that? Or what's the best way to do it? We had someone come that wanted to build a minor. You can build a minor, 65 square metres is in Auckland, without a garage. And they were going to do a 3-bedroom minor. And from my recommendation as a property manager, I wouldn't recommend you build a 3-bedroom, because even though it's technically 3 bedrooms, they are very small bedrooms. And then you don't really want 5 people in a property that small. The wear and tear on it would be more usually, whereas that's ideally suited to a smaller family. And so then you have one decent-sized bedroom and one other bedroom smaller for a child or for an office, and you actually can get, it works better value, I think, in my experience, those sorts of things. So it's looking at that. What can you change without a significant cost? Can you repaint it? Can you change the flooring? Is there small tweaks that will make it that much more? When someone walks into a home, they just go, oh, I could live here. So, making small changes, they don't have to be a lot of money, but just even changing out the curtains. If they're all sun damaged, just go to the warehouse and buy some nice new curtains. Makes a big difference.
How important is it to have a board table of advisors on your investment property journey, and who should be at that table?
Yeah, this is something I really think about for life, not just even on the investment journey, but as having people around you that you can trust and bring wisdom to your life. And when you're starting out or thinking, do I want to do this? Then read as much as you can, but get on board with people who can really help bring some clarity. Before we brought our investment property, we had someone on board that coached us through, which was super helpful. We spent 6 months looking. It took some time, but it gave us a lot of clarity and confidence when we did buy. And it was a lot of money. To go, have we done the right thing? So I think that's a really important thing. But I think it's a great thing for life. I say to my kids, get people around your board table that you can call and get advice on. Maybe they're not your group of friends. Like, your friends are going to probably tell you what you want to hear. It's great to have people on board that will be a little bit more franker than that.
If you're looking and thinking about this board, what sort of skills and roles do they need to have to be able to really help you out? Who do you recommend people should be asking? A business advisor or mortgage broker? Or
I think definitely someone with financial nous. And whether they don't have to be real people in the sense that they don't have to be people that but if you've got some, read and watch YouTube, listen to what people have done on their journey. I think most definitely a trusted mortgage broker is so valuable in that journey. And talking to property managers. What are people looking for in the area you're wanting to buy in? What's the key thing you're looking for, or what are people looking for? Because every area is slightly different. So you want to know that what you're buying or looking at buying is actually going to rent, and what's it going to rent for. Don't just rely on one agent's, get a couple of agents to give their perspective so that you can kind of enter into it with eyes wide open.
Yeah. I want to talk about your personal experiences and challenges in terms of being a woman, managing the growth of a company while having to, we do talk about this, juggling kids. How did you stay intentional with your connections both at work and at home? I think we might have already touched on that, but
I think, I remember my son was very involved in football, and I spent lots of afternoons sitting in the car working while I had to drive him. It was great when he got his license. But, like you're doing all this where you're trying to build a company and to make it something. And there's a lot of, yes, I have a wonderful husband who's super supportive, is a great cheerleader. And yeah, it's just hard work sometimes. Sometimes it's just hard work. Other times it's great. I've got, being in a networking group's been really helpful for me. People that really support you see every week and are cheering you on in that journey. But I think that the kids are understanding. I don't really like working late. I kind of like to keep to work hours, but sometimes you've got to do a work on the weekend or.
Is it a good role to do, or good job to do, or good business to start as a business for a woman to do property management? Is it woman friendly, child friendly, family friendly?
It is. I'd say it's got a huge percentage of women, and I don't know what it would be, but it's probably 80% in the industry with women. It is definitely weighted towards women. There's a lot of women, and in my experience, yes, because it's been my company, I've been able, it's pretty fluid in the sense of, being able to make it work. Like I say, I could take my son to football. I'd just be working in the car while he did that. And that's great. It's great that I might work after hours or work on the weekend, but that's what you have to do. But then I might start late.
Yeah.
Or,
So for someone who's thinking about starting a business in terms of property management, is it still a good business to get into?
Yeah, I believe so, as long as it's not on the North Shore and Hibiscus Coast. Or maybe we should franchise it. And then, I think it is a good, I enjoy it. If you like people, it's, it can have a lot of conflict. It could be a job with conflict.
How do you handle conflict?
Fairly, yeah.
Tell me, how do you... I know that sounds like a job interview, but it's like, how do it's people who are listening. A lot of us find it difficult to have difficult conversations that resolve conflict, and conflict is a major part of, I'm sure, your role. I'm sure you come across people who don't agree with your view, don't agree with your decision. How do you deal with that? What's sort of your thinking process when it comes to whether it's in your job or elsewhere? What sort of wisdom can you give?
The way that I approach it is pretty much try to think of all the bad things that can happen and make sure we mitigate against it. Yeah. So we try to, and that's part of the whole clarity piece. With property management, we have a real clear process of the property and presenting it to a tenant when they move in, so that we have a really big report, lots of photos, video, so that it sort of takes away a lot of that end of the tenancy issues if it's addressed all at the beginning and clear maintenance process and all of that sort of thing. That's really helpful. And then the issues around rent stress, it happens, and we basically try to approach it in terms of being really wanting to work with people. So we're not the heavy hammer. There's obviously process within the Residential Tenancies Act to follow, and we are bound to follow it, but with compassion, I'd like to say, in that. So a lot of conversations, look, let's make this work, because everyone wants to make it work. The owners want to make it work. The tenants want to make it work. So I'm really grateful that we've had very, very few things go sideways. I guess, you know.
It sounds like that you take your role so seriously, but also you have an element of compassion in what you do.
Yeah, I like to think so.
Which I really like. And it does come across in how you talk about your work.
Yeah, I really love it. I love the fact I've had tenants for nearly 20 years and their kids have grown up. It's been, watch them build companies. It's been a real joy to be on the sidelines of that, to be in and out of their lives. But it's so great, you know, like I really enjoy that contact with people. And some people come and they've gone 6 months later or a year later or and they move on. But for an owner, this property is usually for their future. So they've purchased it or they've kept it or it's been an inheritance and they have a plan for it at some point. And usually that's to help with debt or something in the future to help with their children or grandchildren, lots of different reasons. For the tenants, it's their home. And so that's where they're building a life. Their memories are going to be about that place, you know. And when we think of our past, we think of those places. And so we want it to be a place that they felt like it was their home. And, you know, that, and because then that also people take care of their homes. You know, if they don't feel like that, then it can be a little bit, well, it's not mine.
Yeah. So and interesting talking about taking care of home because not everybody does. And, you know, some of the renters out there, we're not talking specifically about your lot, of course, but in general now, how can a landlord ensure that if they don't have a property manager, how can they ensure that their property is looked after?
So part of that is the tenant selection and then regular checking in. So unfortunately, we met an owner recently who hadn't been at a property for 2 years, had thought everything was going really well and was devastated when she turned up. Devastating amount of damage.
What are we talking about here?
Just everywhere. It's damaged. Just, it's so sad. Just the wheels had come off, I'd say, the tenant's life. And although the rent had been paid every week, clearly other aspects of their life were not going well. And, yeah, it's a huge... So that's why there's inspections. We recommend regular inspections, and not that we think our tenants are damaging it, but it just helps create also relationship, make sure that small maintenance issues don't become big maintenance issues. You know, a little leak under the sink, some tenants don't want to bother a landlord over it, but that can mean a whole replacement of the fitting down the track. You know, everything, the MDF will all blow up and then that's a big job, whereas just getting it repaired is going to solve all that issue. So I think building that relationship is just key. But tenant selection is, obviously.
How can you pick a good tenant if you have a house ready to go right now and you're kind of struggling with knowing? Because you can do all those checks and things, can't you?
Yes.
How does it work? And
you can do lots of checks. I think it's really important to go through the process of checking and making sure everything's aligned up with what you've been told by the tenant applying. And, you know, the last step we're bound by privacy law, so you can only ask so many questions. There's certain things we're not allowed to ask, which is totally appropriate. But it's getting a feel for that person. It's important to meet them, you know, not do something with someone that you want to have met them. And there's different ways we can do that. We get people inquiring from overseas or from out of town. So we'll FaceTime them and meet them. We'll do our best to get a full picture of that person. So, yeah, I think that's the important thing.
But then what are the warning signs that someone is not quite the right tenant for your property that you're trying to rent out?
Well, if you've got some things that are just, you have a question. We had someone apply recently, and I'm pretty sure it was the aunt that was giving the reference. So they just didn't feel right. And some of the answers to the questions we ask, they didn't quite have the answers for, which, some landlords may not be able to do that, but generally they know, whereas this just felt made up. And then we did some more digging, and our background checks found that there was a whole number of tribunal applications against the person, and you got to make sure you got the right tribunal application, but we were pretty sure it was the same person. So once we sort of got, something feels a bit not quite right, and it wasn't. So, yeah.
I mean, apart from that as well, what would someone be looking for? Ability to pay, like, their credit score, I'm sure there's people out there who own homes and they don't have a property manager.
Yes.
And they don't have access to expertise and time invested. And they're doing it out of a whim, and then they get in trouble, of course, if they don't do it the right way and the best way for them. So, and I'm sure a lot of people get in trouble for that and lose money or have damages, as we were talking just before. And clearly the answer is to get someone who understands what to do and has got experience in this area, like yourself, and, other property managers in the areas to help them out, because it's always better to get an expert who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree. I think, we're in the middle of the Olympic Games, generally the kayaker doesn't do the shot put, like they're specialists. And the same, I'm not going to become a mortgage broker. I leave that to the specialist, I don't sell real estate, so leave that to the specialist. And I think that's the thing. Even though the property management industry isn't regulated, I'm disappointed that it's not. I think it would be great if it was and would move towards it, because I just think that gives more security to the industry, and it means that you have you have done training and lots of things like that, which we've done as a company anyway. But I think I've been in the business 20 years. It's a lot of stuff, a lot of information I know, and a lot of, you just learned. Not to say that someone new in the industry can't, because I've got great team members, young, who are new in the industry, but I back them up, I guess, with my experience. So I think having someone, it's just changed so much. We've got new changes coming on board next year likely. So there's just lots of changes. If you know all that and you've been doing it and you've got a really stringent process, then keep doing it. But I would say to anyone that's just like inherited a property or accidentally become a landlord or wants to invest, then do what you do, go and do it well, and make this a part of your business.
Why are you disappointed that the property management sector is not regulated? Firstly, why is it not regulated?
Well, that was up for discussion, and then the new government's decided not to go ahead with that, and part of it's probably because there's a lot of debate about that, and still a lot of work that they just don't want to put into because they've got other things to work on. So,
but what is regulation? What does that look like if you do have regulation?
It means essentially you'd be under a body that you would be responsible to, but like real estate agents have real estate industry. So they govern them, and then if there's any complaints, that's the governing body. We have nothing like that. So if a property manager ran off with your money, your rent, there's no governing body.
Why is that? Why haven't you got a governing body till 2024?
Wow. It's just, I don't know. Why?
It's a bit strange, isn't it?
I don't know. Yeah, I think they should, because I think it's a serious amount of money tied up in property to not have that.
And your role as a property manager is quite important to make sure that you're taking care of an asset.
Yes, yeah.
And it's you've got access to, physical access to the house. Are you able to do something about that?
Yeah, no, because this government said that they're not going to pursue it. But I think there is, within the industry, a lot of people are voluntarily following what would be best practice. So, and I think that's a great thing. So it's really asking those questions of property managers in your area. If you're looking at them, do they have a separate account for running their business?
If someone if someone has a house to rent and they're looking for a property manager, now is the time to choose someone to take care of their home, to find them someone to rent, and to follow that up and ensure that their house is looked after. What do they look for in a good property manager?
Asking a few questions. So some of the questions to ask, well, first of all, make sure, meet them and see if you like them. If you gel with them, because you're working closely with someone, you want to make sure that you feel comfortable with them. If you don't, then don't. Find someone else, because I just think generally in business it's good to work with people you like working with, so first rule.
Yep.
Second is making sure that they are they a company? Well, probably you should do that before you meet them, but are they a registered company? Do they have a registered bank account? It's not run out of their own private bank account. And what experience? So have they got their level 4 property management that's available? It's the only real learning, kind of formal learning that you can do. So although it's not, I wouldn't say that's a must-have. All of my team have done it, and I've done it, and it's not rocket science. So, but it's just showing that people are invested in learning. And I think that's probably key, is that someone is up with what's happening in the industry. So you want to know that. What properties are they renting? What experience have they got in that? I don't think it would matter if they're new to the industry, but if they've come with some prior experience, or they've got people around them with experience. So I think when people are younger, they have a real drive, and so I think that's a great attribute to have. So it's not necessarily an age thing.
Is there hope for the people in New Zealand who want to buy a house and kind of could be discouraged because they're not able to? They think it's so expensive and they have to rent. What sort of advice have you got for them?
Go hunting, go looking, and look at a lot, and look outside maybe the area you want to be in, especially for your first home. I think it's, what can you add value to? What's going to be a stepping stone to something else? And that's it. You might have to take a step back to what you're used to be able to go forward. But what can you add value to be able to then give you an opportunity to move into something else? You probably aren't going to get your dream home on the first go round. So it's coming to terms with that. And seeing who you can do that with. If you can't, can you get support to make that happen? Or have you got friends that you commit to doing it with for 5 years, or something like that, where you go, what's a creative way to make this happen? There's lots of opportunity to be creative, but it is taking the cost of that and making it happen too. So yeah, I think, and being committed to it, nothing just doesn't happen without a plan. So get a plan.
Some wise words there, Megan. Final thing I'll ask, which is I ask my guests who come on the show, if I would look at your notes, you've got quite a lot on the table. I'm looking at your notes on the table. There's quite a lot, isn't there? But if I look at your notes, maybe your journal, what would it say today?
And preparing for this, thinking about my journey with business, and this business in particular, is, I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of my team. I'm really proud of what we do. But the thing that I enjoy is the fact that there's been so many people we've been able to help. And that's, it's a nice feeling. to have that and to feel that I've contributed to people's lives. I think most people would say that have dealt with me. There may be one or two that don't. But anyway, we'll soon find out.
99%.
Yeah, 99%, I'm sure. So, yeah, I'm hopeful for our future in Auckland. You know, I'm hopeful that we are a country who wants the best for their people and to move forward. And so I'm hopeful that we will see change so that there is an ability to be able to afford property. I really hope that for our future.
Oh, thank you, Megan, for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mina.